All parasites have four characteristics in common. They cannot survive on their own accord, requiring a host to exist. They have to sneak. Being covert and undetected is critical as a subversive species. They keep their host weak to thrive. The sicker the host, the healthier the parasite. Lastly, if they face destruction, they won't hesitate to sink their own ship, killing their host even if it means suicide. When editing our last episode on Revelation, I put together this breakdown of the verse on Wormwood that, despite what any church tells us, is clearly about ridding the body of parasites as an initiatory prep to receive clearer visions of the divine, what we would today call downloads. It goes without saying that our body works better when it is healthy in all regards. Acting as an antenna would be no different. But this sent me down another one of those rabbit holes that put all other rabbit holes on the back burner, because this seems like something that will need to be addressed by any student of the occult before they can move forward with clear discernment. And more importantly, if parasites exist here in physical reality and are detrimental to our physical health, then as above, so below, there are surely unseen parasitic forces at work that no discerning mind seeking clarity can ignore. I had a gut feeling to text our friend Eric Anthony for his thoughts, and he responded, in Kabbalistic thought, what can appear as parasitic forces, often described as the Qlippoth or shells, are not independent beings in the full sense, but residual structures that arise from imbalance or fragmentation. They persist where divine light is not properly integrated. And while they may be described as if they have agency, they are not truly sentient in the way a unified consciousness is. These correspond to distortions. They are not external entities, but patterned expressions of misalignment within the erotic sphere. That's how Eric flirts with me. What appears parasitic is the psyche feeding on its own fragmentation, and what appears sentient is patterned reactivity that mimics intelligence without true identity. What sustains them is division, what resolves them is integration.
Look how quickly it roots. Red growth pattern was even observed in many of the large war-torn cities of Europe. Indeed, some of these plants may thrive on devastated ground.
The human person thinks and acts from three different places. The brain, the heart, and the gut all have a bajillion literal neurons. All three noggins are connected by the vagus nerve, making us feel like one thinker. When a parasite attaches to the gut, it doesn't just feed on whatever it happens upon. Instead, its very own desires and behavior are expressed through you and become your desires and behavior. This possession makes you retrieve more of what it wants. This is why you crave sugar, even though the human body rejects it. But the other side of that coin that nobody talks about is that you also acquire some of its instinctual nature of behavior. And a parasite's only response system is pure fight or flight. All it knows is consumption and reproduction. The heart noggin is not immune from this genre of invasion. Parasites in this neighborhood can cause myocarditis, and in cases like Toxoplasmosis, a worm born from the Lord's most perfect creature, the cat, can alter your behavior in such a way that makes us prone to risk-taking, giving wolves a brave heart, but making people give their hearts away to the cats who gave us the worm, as it makes us love them more. This seems parallel to the will of the worm and its self-preservation mechanisms. A frightening example is a mouse infected by this parasite will put itself in front of a cat on a suicide mission driven strategically by the worm that is done with the mouse and wants to be passed on to the cat. Where things get darker is seeing the parasitic effect on a human brain. The same desires and fight or flight response systems listed above now reduce the brain's higher abilities, making more work, thus behavior, to come from what's called the reptilian brain, or amygdala. Mystics and scientists agree on few things. But one thing they certainly do share is the importance of harmony between all three organs, often called heart-brain regulation or body-mind coherence, depending on which language subscription you signed up for. When all lined up and balanced, we are a beacon of good-willed nature. But when out of whack, we are susceptible to infection, to infiltration. Basically, the door opens for anyone to walk in holding a disformal invitation. This makes me realize something truly frightening. Despite the importance of knowing about them, in America, we never hear about parasites. Not in school, not in medicine, not in church, etc. What if the literal parasites that feed on our physical life force energy are not only parallel, but synonymous with demonic entities that feed on our minds and emotions? Could it be that, like our own pineal anatomy, parasites also work as an antenna, but instead of our ever-fleeting downloads, they funnel in something much, much worse, and is entirely preventable? What if our society is not actually sick like we think, but instead hijacked by archonic forces? Truth is always stranger than fiction. Time and time again, we find that everything within and below has a primordial source that it corresponds with above. Parasites would be no different. And that correspondence seems to be of a demonic nature. But as they say when confronting the latter, be not afraid. Because the problem might be cosmic, but the solution is much closer to home.
I have seen these flowers all over. They're growing like parasites on other plants. All of a sudden, where are they coming from?
Outer space?
What are you talking about, a space flower?
Well, why not a space flower? Why do we always expect metal ships? Look, there's bound to be other ways they can get into our systems.
That's right. They could be getting into us through touch or through their fragrance.
We would never even notice it, not from the impurities that we have. I mean, we eat junk and we breathe junk.
Look, I don't know where they're coming from, but I feel as though I've been poisoned today.
Now, they could start getting into our systems and screwing up our genes like DNA, recombining us, changing us, just the same way those rocket ships landed thousands of years ago so those spacemen could mate with monkeys and apes and create the human race. It's happening now.
In Mark chapter 5, a man with an unclean spirit spent night and day wandering tombs, crying and cutting himself. When he saw the Christ, he ran up, begging to be healed from a demon who called itself Legion, because we are many. Big Dog JC cast the demons out into a herd of 2,000 pigs, an animal known to carry and pass parasites, and they reacted by stampeding off a cliff into turbulent waters where they choked. The man went on to finally make friends and tell incredible stories. Now, the Bible is written in allegory, and Jesus spoke in parables so as to be timeless and understood by various cultures of different lingos. Our goal today will be to find out what that means for us in literal terms. When discussing Kundalini last month, we talked about Constantine getting together with his boys at Nicaea to purposefully destroy the zodiacal implications of the Bible. A mission accomplished, by the way. What we left out was the reason he so viciously killed his wife and mother. He caught them with forbidden scriptures, texts by the Essenes. It could be assumed that, like all banned books, this literature was a potential threat to his position of power, making it, like all banned books, worth a second look with a modern eye. In the Essene Gospel of Peace, there is a wild story. Jesus went to them and said, Satan is like a choleric neighbor who entered his neighbor's house while he was absent, intending to take his goods away. But some told that his enemy was ravaging within the house, and he came back running. When the wicked neighbor, having gathered together all that pleased him, saw from afar the master of the house returning in haste, he was very wroth that he could not take all away, and set to breaking and spoiling all that was there, so that even if the things might not be his, the other might have nothing. I tell you truly, even so did Satan enter your bodies, which are the habitation of God, and he took in his power all that he wished to steal, your breath, your blood, your bone, your flesh, your bowels, your eyes, your ears. But by your fasting and your prayer, you have called back the Lord of your body and his angels. And now Satan sees that the true Lord of your body returns, and that it is the end of his power. Wherefore, in his wrath, he gathers his strength once again, that he may destroy your bodies before the coming of the Lord. It is for this that Satan torments you so grievously, for he feels that the end is come. Among the sick, one was more tormented by Satan than all others. He was so weak that he could not even crawl to Jesus and cried from afar, "Master, I do suffer. I know that you are sent from God. If you will, cast out Satan from my body." Jesus answered, "Satan torments you thus greatly because you have already fasted many days. You do not feed him with all the abominations with which you defiled the temple of your spirit. You torment Satan with hunger. Fear not, for Satan will be destroyed before your body is destroyed. Great is your faith. Be it according to your faith, and you shall soon see face to face the frightful countenance of Satan. I will cast out from you the powerful Satan by the strength of the innocent Lamb of God, for the Holy Spirit of God makes powerful the weakest than the strongest." Jesus milked an ewe and put the milk upon the sand made hot by the sun, saying, "Lo, the power of the angel of water has entered the milk, and now the power of the angel of sunshine." The vapor of the hot milk began to rise slowly into the air. "Come and breathe in by your mouth the strength of the angels of water, of sunshine, and of air. He will come out of you to satisfy his hunger, and he will not be able to resist." The sick man's body was seized, and he retched as though he would vomit. He gasped for air. "Now does Satan leave his body. See him." And Jesus pointed to the sick man's open mouth. They all saw with astonishment and terror that Satan was coming out from his mouth in the shape of an abominable worm, straight towards the steaming milk. Then Jesus took 2 sharp stones in his hands and crushed the head of Satan, and drew out from the sick man all the body of the monster, which was almost as long as the man. And then all his pain ceased, and the others looked with terror at the abominable body of Satan. "See what an abominable beast you carried and nourished for long years, and sin no more, lest Satan return to you again. Let your body be henceforth a temple dedicated to your God. Be true sons of God, that you also may partake in his power and in the knowledge of all secrets. For wisdom and power can come only from the love of God. Let all your deeds be sacrificed to God, and feed not Satan, for the wages of sin is death." Jesus departed, saying, "I will come again to all who persist in prayer and fasting till the 7th day." This scene, fitting for any horror movie, can be taken literally, that is, medically. But what can't be ignored is that the parasite is depicted as not just satanic, but as Satan itself. Keeping in mind that Satan is not a name for a singular being, but is a title of position. That is the role of adversary. These verses highlight the fact that ancient storytellers did not separate allegory from literal happening. To them, the world of conceptual archetypal mind was one and the same as hard, tangible reality. Not only entangled and not just 2 sides of the same coin, but actually one. Kind of like the image of a movie in a theater is the direct result of the projector up in the booth. Basically, any modern medical practitioner reading that story will say it makes sense, that the man had a rare and dangerous worm in his digestive tract. After fasting the worm to starvation, Jesus could bait it with the scent of external sustenance, using milk vapor, forcing it to scramble for food in the event of even exposing itself. The parasite had no free will to decide strategically. It will instinctually go for that next quick meal, even if it means suicide. The power of the angel of water enters the milk, so that the angel of sunshine can also get involved, and then the angel of air. This is clearly a mystic's way of describing the boiling process. Still no qualms from the doctor hearing the story, but where the modern medical practitioner ceases in expertise are the parts where the sick man originally invited the Satan worm into himself by defiling the temple of spirit. That angels protect the man's body from Satan's anger, which is impotent against God, and that it was the man's faith or belief in Jesus that allowed him to be cured. All of which might be called placebo by a doctor, while noting that we really don't know what placebo is or how and why it works. And finally, the man, now cured, is instructed to be true sons of God, to partake in his power and knowledge of all secrets, and that this is done by having love in your heart and sacrificing all deeds. This is right about where our modern doctor quits listening. Just, it's not his scope of work. Understandable. But perhaps it's our scope of work. That is, each individual person. To figure out how this all works, we need to start from the ground up. Let's explore the anatomical composition of literal parasites and work our way up that fractal to celestial beings called by many names. Because how you get rid of one is surely the road to knowledge that rids of all others. Despite having no free will of their own, parasites can be very clever. They usually enter the body through foods, especially ones forbidden in religious texts, but they can also attach to flesh or be transmitted from creature to person, like bug bites or getting a little too personal with that date you literally just met. Because all they want in life is to spread and expand outwardly. They can hide from your immune system by changing their surface proteins, literally going incognito with a new disguise, shape-shifting every time confronted. Some are more powerful than that and can manually turn down your immune system, sabotage from within like a covert spy. And they all have different ways to anchor themselves, using suction, sheer bite grip, or little hooks. They don't know how to thrive on their own accord, so they make a living at your expense. Some absorb the nutrient part of your food before your body gets to it, while others let you have the nutrients only to consume the resulting cells, tissues, and of course, blood. That one is supposed to be lawyers. You're too young to remember Jurassic Park. Where they have us beat is multiplication through sheer numbers. When they lay eggs, they make enough to ensure the statistical survival of at least some. When things get cramped at home, they blindly leave through expelled body fluids on a suicide mission, hoping to chance upon a new host before they are exposed. Dying of exposure. What makes parasites unique in nature is that you cannot work with them or around them. The only thing they know is to disrupt biological harmony, feed, reproduce, adapt. They have to be completely eradicated in total, or they will take over an entire system. And if they are faced with the threat of imminent death, they will pull out all stops to ensure they take you down with them in a futile attempt to kill their own host that they depended on for survival in the first place. The ones in your gut will expel toxic heavy metals when shit don't go their way. And you really can't make this shit up. It is this short-sighted lack of forethought that really captures the archetype of its character. If you are squeamish, go ahead and look away. I'll let you know when to come back. Ticks have somehow magically developed a way to detect body heat and carbon dioxide. They used to hide and wait, but now they hunt after those attributes. We cannot feel them bite down. Again, because very clever, they produce an acute acting anesthetic from their own saliva before attaching a series of barb-like hooks into the skin. Once attached, they shift the chemistry in their saliva to a cement-like glue. Then finally, they produce an anti-clotting chemical to keep the blood flow popping. This final adaptation wreaks havoc on your immune system, causing fatigue and nausea for weeks, and in rare cases that are becoming more and more common, they will ensure the continued sickness of their host even after their term, with detrimental diseases like Lyme's and alpha-gal. So basically, they are soft and gentle when meeting you, and then slowly ruin your week or entire life. Why are you thinking of your ex right now? Footnote, my mom has alpha-gal, and despite now being allergic to meat, can still have Jack in the Box and other fast foods with no issues. Weird. Side footnote, yes, I know. And I know that you know that I know, okay? But we'll have to save all that for the end of the episode. You know how we do. Okay, no more tick pictures. Brittany, you can look again. You too, Jessica. Come on now. Parasites come in many forms though, like protozoa that are single-celled organisms. They live by the same parasitical rules, but cause malaria, giardiasis, and toxoplasmosis. And if you think I have toxoplasmosis from my itty-bitty perfect little BB kitties, well, you're wrong, fucko, and I will not hesitate to drag you outside by the dick and show you damn well how much I love my fucking cats and none of your damn bitch. We also deal with helminths or worms. Ascariasis are huge and live throughout the intestines and look like Satan. Pinworms are very common and make your butthole itch like a child with a shaved head. Hookworms penetrate through the skin like bare feet and find blood at music festivals. Ringworm is what you had from summer camp as a kid. And low-key, those guys are pretty chill.
I thought those were a fungus.
Are they a fungus? All right, well, actually, that would make sense considering they're kind of chill. Trichonellosis and toniasis, because they leave larvae in muscle tissue and come from the last thing I did with your mom. Look it up. What is not funny, though, are multiple studies by both independent and large researchers suggesting that many of the diseases we have been treating for decades are preventable if treated as a parasite, because some of them are caused by parasites. One of the most likely reasons this is news, despite thousands of years of infestations, is that parasites are sneaky, flying under the radar, so to speak. You can go to a doctor complaining of fatigue, brain fog, headaches, sleeplessness, depression, whatever else, and the doc will work around the parasites, treating the symptoms and not the cause. You just can't see them. They are hidden and silent. Controversial ones like MS could be due to parasites in the spine, along with a specific infection called Epstein-Barr virus. Weird. Malaria is on the radar too, along with autoimmune diseases. But another one in particular, a big one, is looking like it might be from parasitical infection too. And that would be, well, you guessed it. In 1951, Soviet research caught the attention of the CIA for comparing cancer to parasites. The similarities noted came from the findings that both consume a lot of glucose, both have unusual metabolic patterns, and both could be treated and prevented by anti-parasitical medicines. You know, like ivermectin. Wild. Footnote: did you know that if you kill a cancer too quickly, it will release toxins almost like a self-defense mechanism? It's called tumor lysis syndrome. Another fun fact, that the dye they release in the body to detect cancer is glucose, and it excites the cancer, and that's how they can detect it. In any case, all speculations aside, parasites do increase the risk of cancer. Now, as to why the file was classified for 60 years, I have no idea. And neither do you. Nobody knows. I mean, they might protect files, but they would never protect parasites. That'd be crazy, right? Unless maybe the worms might be connected to more than just the host. I don't know, but if the devil plants people to do his work here on earth, then maybe he's got some pets playing fetch with our well-being. After all, back when Big Brother Yeshua saw one face to face, he called it Satan. Our story from earlier catches my attention again in the part where Jesus makes it clear that the man invited the Satan worm into his body by defiling the temple. In biblical canon, the demon called Legion also asked permission before entering that herd of pigs. We know better than to cast pearls on the swine. So the running theme is that demons require some sort of vulnerability or a crack in the door, so to speak, in someone's certitude before they're able onto them at all. The lesson is that the door doesn't have to be wide open. One slip is all that is needed and it's go time in full. There is no parallel between the level of damage done and the level of invitation. The same goes for our familiar fairy problem back in the 1600s. So-called fairies, who are weirdly described like the Greys, would steal good babies and leave behind a changeling, a sick and decrepit baby in its place. This was a commonplace ordeal. Mysterious as fuck, but was a serious matter. Mythology has it that these fairies also couldn't cross particular boundaries without first getting the green light. They, of course, used trickery and games of confusion to make their victims slip up just enough to get that permission slip. Mythology cannot lie. It is quite literally the collectively dreamt ideas of all humans ever. All of the above are easily the origin of our modern mythology about vampires. In vampiric religion, they cannot feed on your blood until they infest your house, and they cannot infest your house without you first having them in, and always through trickery. Trick or treat indeed. This lore can be equated to the ramifications of temptation. You enjoy the treat that is instant here and now, and carnal desires are very sweet.
It smells lovely.
Now I want you to listen to me.
I'm listening to you now.
But then come to find out the candy was a trick, and you are the one being fed upon. Indeed, parasites can be introduced in much the same way, but it's not just literal worms. Remember, all parasites above and below by nature act the same way. So they're also limited to the same set of rules above and below. Please keep this in mind for later. How interesting is it that both vampires and parasites are deathly afraid of garlic, clove, sunlight, silver and copper, and what's the other thing that they fear? That's right, a good old-fashioned crucifix. Werewolves have an interesting mythology as well. This type of possession happens during the full moon. It just so happens that all fluids of the human body are synced up with the cycles of the moon. And when it is full, parasites seem to notice, and this is when they like to party. Being a little extra active during this phase also makes it a good time to kill them. You have seen stats on human behavior during the full moon that makes sense of all these mythic images. Considering that our behavior is often an extension of parasitical cravings, could it be that all of the above behavioral anomalies share a common source in something much more ancient? Because that's the thing about parasitical possession. The host believes those desires are their own. Thus, they mistakenly think that they are in control. Demonic possession has a long mythic history. As long as men have been on 2 feet, certain ones have succumbed to being completely subjugated by sheer negative energy, loosely called evil. Similar to trickery, the demon chooses his host based on his being weak. Again, myths do not lie. The reason a man, any man at all, with absolutely no exceptions, is apt to let evil enter his heart to conduct deeds of ill intent on purpose is because he is weak, frail, and pathetic. We are not talking about theft here. This has nothing to do with survival, to kill or be killed. That's not what evil is concerned with. Evil yearns to harm others in a feeble attempt to make others just as weak and shitty. Every rape, molestation, all the way to a CEO who stashes his already plump pockets by cutting his employees' means of living, all fall under the same umbrella: weakness and a desperate lack of character. Vampires can't see themselves in the mirror. This is analogous of weak-minded men of power. Looking in the mirror brings them shame and disgust, as well as it should. But instead of having the courage to face that inner turmoil and alchemize it properly, they spill it out onto others by harming and taking from them. Not to gain anything from themselves, but just and only to bring others down to their subhuman level. Fucking.
I don't know what the fuck you said because I was locked in.
Yeah, it's interesting that way back in the day, in these Eastern countries, they didn't choose kings through nepotism. It wasn't the king's son that became king. They used initiation. And in a ritual that they called Abhisika, I'll put that on the screen, they would put the potential king through a series of turmoil, things that were frightful, things that were fearful, and the toughest man became king. Now, the reason that that's interesting is psychologically fascinating, because the man who was the most brave in the face of evil just so happens to be the least evil of all men.
There's no need for hate now, or love. You're evolving into a new life form. We came here from a dying world. We drift through the universe from planet to planet, pushed on by the solar winds. We adapt, and we survive. The function of life is survival.
Possession occurs in the insect kingdom as well. A parasitical fungus called Ophiocordyceps can't move about on its own. It blows wherever the wind takes it. Sometimes that means onto carpenter ants. And carpenter humans too, if you look close enough. It penetrates the exoskeleton and then germinates. It feeds on the ant's insides, but is careful not to kill it completely. Here's the charming part. The fungus shifts its chemical makeup to sync with the nervous system of the ant, and then lives through the ant, wearing it as a disguise. Now, for the first time, the fungus can move around and explore its world. That is, the ant's world vicariously. To celebrate its new life of free will, it drives the ant up whatever plant is high enough to sprout like some sci-fi alien movie from the ant's head and spread more of itself through dropping spores to the rest of the unsuspecting ants. What is important here is that despite how the individual ant might feel about the suicide mission, the other ants yet to be infected have no idea their comrade has been hijacked. It is very likely that the infected ant doesn't even know it was infected, as its will is now belonged to the parasite that controls it. Hypothetically, if an entire colony is usurped and only one or a few dodge this quiet attack, they would surely be very confused watching their entire ant colony willfully plunge into activities that go against the well-being of the entire colony. The non-infected ants would then be outcasts in a world of mutually assured suicide. Our society is driven by multiple agencies with their own monetized goals. When the will to power drives a business to maximize profits, it creates a burden on everyone else in that society to have to keep up and fit in with those short-sighted goals. The concept of advertising itself is an egregore, meaning even without literal biological anatomy, it is alive and active, living through the numerous entities that make up its body. So its body is a shape-shifting formlessness that attaches to and adapts to its environment. It works through human people as an avatar to post itself up high on billboards, TVs, and phone screens in order to germinate and spread itself onto other human people who, once infected, will go out and spend their time, money, and energy on that egregore. It doesn't matter how destructive the product or results to society are. The people will carry out the goal of that advertisement that, by design, seemingly came from up high. The few people who were not infected by the advertisement are now outcast into a minority of people who don't have the newest throwaway gadgetry. For example, those who say no to new smartphones are no longer getting fluent communication to keep up with life in general. If you miss a call on your landline, the opportunity that called just moves on to the next candidate who has that motherfucking thing on them at all times, in their right hand, on their foreheads. Those who maintain the same car from the 90s can no longer find a mechanic that works on those vehicles. Someone who writes a script from the soul or a song from the heart can no longer produce content as quickly as someone with the newest computer that does it for them. Someone who does not want their money in a digital bank is now broke. This list could go on for an entire episode, but the point is, if that living egregore recognizes that it can infect more potential hosts by weakening their immune system, it will take that opportunity immediately with no foresight of the consequences. The parasite will change its chemistry to induce a new pathogen with the sole purpose of making it weak and susceptible to further infections. The way this trickery could be pulled on humans is rather easy. By outlawing all mind-expanding plant medicines by replacing them with readily available alcohol. By replacing the food Mother Nature has prepared with chemical substitutes. By introducing music that glorifies crime and sexual obsessions as something cool. By replacing a child's playful learning with stale factory settings. By marginalizing individual thought as eccentric and introducing a tribe to side with. This is also a list that could go on, but they are all ways for the egregore to manipulate its host to do its bidding, even if it means a slow, mutual decline in quality of product and life. One might ask, have you ever felt like your behavior wasn't your own. This fungus that turns ants into zombies cannot have its way without the ants as a vehicle. This is important because when we talk about a living egregore, it's easy to picture some etheric, eldritch being that hovers lurking in the shadows. No, it wears a face and shows a certificate of self-serving authenticity with an empty promise of collective gains. The egregore chooses particularly weak-minded hosts, human hosts, and then charismatically spreads its spores to anyone willing to put up with that host. Weakness here, however, doesn't mean dumb or sad. The type of weakness this particular parasitical egregore chose is a thirst for more, a lust for external gain and validation. This is the cornerstone of Zen and Taoist philosophy. You can be as quick, strong, and clever as you want all day, but if you have that despairing hunger for wealth or clout, you still fall victim to this precise trickery due to that weakness. Meanwhile, those who have enough and are grateful for life as it is, even without having fallen victim to this parasitical trickery, are now living in a world where they are forced to keep up with the infected or get left behind. The worst part is, you can show the infected how they were infected, literally pointing out the parasite they carry, and they will hypnotically respond with pride over all their progress, never once stopping to realize that someday they'll die, and all their progress in life will only feed that egregore that will go on living without them and enter a new generation of hosts. The demonic possession portrayed in movies is not the demonic possession that scripture warns us about. Those allegories tell us the story of an archetypal happening that is much more subtle, discreet, and timelessly closer to home. Otherwise, what's the point of the scripture or any allegory or myth? The egregore realized that as well. So it created those movies to infect pop culture with the most extreme form of demonic possession, so that we would be on the lookout for that instead of what is rolling out right in front of us. This is also easily done by desensitizing potential hosts with predictive programming. If we think that evil will show itself by spinning a girl's head around and vomiting green slag, then we won't bat an eye when real evil quietly passes a law that makes it illegal to collect rainwater, talk smack, or sue corporations. We won't notice if it starts quietly paying donations to news media companies, gradually more and more, until they cut less profitable incomes and all of a sudden find themselves depending on that one particular income. Now, who writes the story? The people or the egregore? Common people tend to assume that evil shows up with a briefcase of cash or intimidation with threats to scare hosts like the news media into doing their bidding. Again, like in movies. But no one would go for that, as it exposes the parasite to the sunlight of day. Real subversion is slow, gradual, and passed from host to host without setting off any alarms. Without being educated on knowing how to spot it, an entire generation of potential hosts can become slaves to the egregore, all because of those first few men who were too weak to stand against it. The defining characteristic of demonic possession is a limitation of the host's free will. By definition, any governing system that governs, thus places limits on external things, is primed to attract the very people who are weak enough to grant entry to the egregious parasite. The result is devastation, because that means the minority of strong-minded people within that field will be outnumbered by those who were easily infected. And before you know it, it's all of them. A synchronicity is when something within, like an idea or a concept, manifests itself into physical reality as an event with uncanny timing. This is what's meant when we hear it described as a meaningful coincidence. It breaks the fourth wall in a way that speaks to you as if it were alive. Seeing the same car that you drive is not a synchronicity, but a coincidence. Seeing the same car that you drive right after explaining that to your mother-in-law is a bit more like it. It is a little wink from the other side to remind you that it's with you. And that is what makes the year 1945 so mind-numbingly bizarre that after hearing this, you'll lose sleep explaining it to your mother-in-law. Revelation ends with a warning that absolutely no one has the authority to remove or change any of the scriptures. However, it is no secret that many different groups certainly did. While these Dark Age scribes were hard at work making scripture better fit their time period, the so-called Gnostic Gospels were hidden away, preserved in a cave, hiding from the holy hooligans who would have them revised. Then, in 1945, they were found, not by historians, not by a research expedition, but by accident, by a farmer looking for fertilizer. Not a synchronicity or even a coincidence. In the same year, ENIAC created the first computer that would eventually lead to AI. Also in the same year, nuclear technology went from theory to reality, supposedly. We, of course, tested it immediately without regard, as one does. And once tested, we used it immediately in Hiroshima, Japan, 1945. Also in 1945, the Germans' loss of World War II inspired an egregore of its own, calling itself the United Nations. Also in 1945, the Bretton Woods system stabilized global trade currencies, and a World Bank, the biggest egregore of all, was born. All this and more of 1945 were followed up by the first and still biggest wave of UFOs the world has ever seen. So now we have a fully loaded set of coincidences, but we're still not in synchronicity territory yet. These world-altering events cast a shadow over the discovery of the Gnostic texts. So the biggest archaeological find of all time was now just loose, out floating around. People who understood their significance against the grain of the worldly concerns went out of their way to track down as many fragments as they could in order to deliver them into the hands of the only man on earth who could possibly decode them. Carl Jung became the reason we can make any sense of these abstract scientific treatises. He is the one who found the link between alchemy and Gnosticism, as both are truly matters of the psyche. A library of texts, untampered, waiting thousands of years to find the one guy who could read them properly, and happens to be the same man who coined the very term synchronicity. When Revelation said, "Do not remove any of the words from this text," it was thoroughly meant, and something or someone upstairs saw what was going on here in 1945 and decided to put the Word of God right back at a time when we needed it the most. Whoa. Adding another fourth wall synchronicity to the pile is the fact that the Gnostic Gospels explain the psychology of the very same parasitical egregores forming on Earth at that time, and it calls them Archons. The archetype of the Archon is not unique only to Gnosticism. Tibet have their Mara, Islam has Djinn, Hindus have Asaras, Mayans have Rahu of Xibalba, and to Christians, all that shit is just demons. These beings are abominated copies of Source due to a glitch in the code upstairs. So they have no free will of their own and can only imitate Source, shape-shifting to mimic what it sees by attaching to it and multiplying copies of empty copies. Being born bereft of the divine spark, there's no incentive for growth, no use for foresight and betterment. Having been born technically in this reality, they have the same laws of nature, and in our nature, everything eats. Our reality comes with a food chain built-in default. So what does an Archon eat? Well, what do we eat? Death. You can be the most guiltless vegan on earth, but your sustainment will still require that a living being suffers, to be ripped up from its home, devoured and digested. As physical beings, we eat physical death, flesh and plant matter. As etheric beings, Archons default to the etheric version of that. So, as with typical parasitical behavior, they are not satisfied with just eating whatever they happen across. They will change the chemistry of their being to adapt to a human vehicle and wear it as a suit in order to induce the behaviors that will catalyze more death and suffering, which is food in both realms. This is very likely the origin of blood sacrifice, an activity that is not extinct. In our episode Tripartite Cosmosis, we mentioned Plato's passionate research on near-death experiences, showing that even in ancient times, NDEs are the same across the board. Plato said that the moment of death is what justifies an entire life dedicated to philosophy. It is safe to say that he would be absolutely baffled to see modern humans running around to collect a mass of worldly goods and information that don't transition with us onto the other side. Perhaps today's hypothesis that many modern people are acting out the desires and passions of the parasites they host would line up with his philosophy. But what did Plato mean when he said that a life of philosophy pays off at its end? Perhaps the answer can be found in the close neighboring philosophy called Gnosticism. The Greek philosophers are known mostly for their lessons on Stoicism. Having Stoic traits are psychologically proven to improve the overall quality of life while here on Earth. It is no surprise that the self-disciplined activities of the Stoic are in direct opposition to the knee-jerk survival instincts of the parasitical archetype. The parasite comes and goes quickly and is of no value to keep around. The human soul, on the other hand, is the single most precious thing in all of reality, according to the wisdom traditions. If the human soul is fine-tuned, sharp, and stoic, it has earned a graduation into a higher form of free will that transcends this life into the next. In other words, you will be able to choose what happens to your sentient soul after bodily death. A soul that does not take on the pains of self-sacrificing discipline is recycled back into the digestive system of life to once again chase desires and preferences that expel more and more emotional energy, becoming an etheric food substance without any control over its outcome. The microcosmic version of this concept is so simple, it fits on a little chart. I drew this puppy up on Paint Workshop and put it in my book of wonderful suffering, link below. And to this day, I have seen no reason to revise it, because to this day, it still works for me and anyone else who has adopted its simplicity. You can apply any part of daily life to the chart. Say food, for example. Food without sacrifice is fast and instantly gratifying, but then that missing sacrifice finds you later without your control or aim. Food with sacrifice, meaning you took the time to select ingredients and cook it up, has a long-term gratification because you chose first where the sacrifice happens, rather than initially bypassing it. The same applies to sitting on the couch versus working out, or doom scrolling rather than reading, or buying a product instantly versus researching other possible options, or hooking up with a person versus getting to know them first, etc. The point is that a sacrifice will be made at every intersection in life. You might as well be the one to choose what it is rather than it finding you later. That said, this hermetic law of cause and effect extends out much further than our current perception can even imagine. That is, into the next life. By doing the hard work necessary to achieve gnosis in this life, we will be prepared for navigation in the mysterious next. This concept is illustrated quite literally in the Coptic Book of Jehu. In this much lesser known and only known illustrated Gnostic text, Jesus takes his closest disciples aside to share with them the cosmic teachings about what to expect after death. It is a rare occurrence where Jesus is teaching in literal terms with straightforward diagrams that are not shrouded in allegory. He first draws out the etheric forms of the archons and emanations of God with what look uncannily like modern electrical diagrams, and then names each one and describes its specific purpose. The student is meant to memorize and ritualistically work toward having this knowledge tempered in their mind for the sole purpose of not being fooled by archonic beings that are hostile to the ignorant soul after death. If you are reminded of the Mara in the Bardo Thodol, that was named the Tibetan Book of the Dead after the more ancient Coming Forth by Day, known as the Egyptian Book of the Dead, well, you'd be spot on. Because these three texts, separated by time and distance, all say the same thing. Assuming you are familiar with both the Tibetan and Egyptian Books of the Dead, let's read from this Book of Jehu and see how it parallels. All right, so it is illustrated, which is rare in Gnostic, and that's like the coolest illustration, but I went through this whole Gnostic text, picked out the juiciest nuggets. This script is very repetitive, so I'm just going to give you the first of each nugget. And when he had given voice, there came forth this voice, which is the emanation. This is his character. He will set up a rank corresponding to the treasuries, and it will place it as watchers at the gate. But again, caused a power from himself to move the true God. At first he caused it to radiate within him so that he might move his emanation in the treasuries, that they also might bring forth emanations. He emanated 12 emanations, and there are 12 heads in each emanation. And this name is that of the 12, and there are 12 according to each one of the ranks, and they are one outside the other endlessly. Just for context, by the way, just for you, Anthony, he got his disciples anti-parasited and then gave them some kind of like hallucinogen to prepare them for death, and said whenever he gets out there, out of their bodies, to get ready and have these sigils ready whenever they meet the Archons.
Do you know what type of psychedelic it was?
No, it doesn't say. It has something to do with, there might be, but it's something that is good with, I'll read it here in a minute, but like frankincense and sage. Might have been Salvia divinorum, dude. You're right, dude. It might have been Salvia, which is what they use in the Catholic Church and shit.
Right.
But this is where it gets, dude, this shit gets weird. All right. When you have come to this place, seal yourselves with this seal. This is its name. Say it only once while the cipher is in your hand, and say this name 3 times, and the watchers and the ranks and the veils are drawn back until you go to the place of their father, and he gives you his seal and his name, and you cross over. Concerning the placing of this treasury, 6 places around it, in the midst of which is these 2 lines which are drawn below his places are thus. They are the root of his places in which he stands. These 2 lines also are the pathways when you will go to the presence of the Father. These alphas are also veils which are drawn before him. So, and this is an important thing too, is that people have this image of the 12 disciples like it's some kind of sausage fest. There were women at this party. Surround me, my 12 disciples and women disciples, so that I say to you the great mysteries of the treasury. These in the invisible God, which no one knows. The aeons of the Archons cannot bear it when you perform them, nor are they able to grasp them. But the paralemptia of the treasury of light come, and they bring forth the soul from the body, until they pass through all the aeons, and they erase all sins which they have committed knowingly. And the soul leaps continually from place to place until it reaches the treasury of the light. These mysteries which I shall give to you. Guard them and do not give in them to any man except he who is worthy. Neither give them to those who serve the 8 powers of the great Archon, who are those who eat the menstrual blood of their impurity and the semen of men. Sorry, Sean. Saying, we have known the knowledge of the truth, and we pray to the true God. However, their God is wicked. This is referring to the Old Testament God? Probably. Hear now that I tell you his position. He is the 3rd power of the great Archon. This is his name, Trechius, the son of Sabaoth and Adamus. He is the enemy of the kingdom of heaven. His face is that of a wild pig. His teeth stick out of his mouth, and he has another face of a lion behind him. And I will give to you the mystery of taking away from you the evil of the Archons. So far, this is all about knowing the Archons better than they know themselves, who are reflections of the disciples, but we'll get to that. Here's where we get a little witchy. This is very interesting. Jesus offered the incense of the mystery, which took away the evil of the Archons from the disciples. He caused them to build an incense altar upon thalassia plants. He laid upon it vine branches and juniper and betel and kuoshi. There's a question mark after kuoshi. We don't know what that is. And asbestos and agate stone and frankincense. And he caused all his disciples to be clothed with linen garments. He caused them to be crowned with mugwort, and he placed frankincense in their mouths. He placed the cipher of the first Amen in their hands. They placed their feet together. When Jesus finished sealing his disciples, he spoke the prayer. Hear me and compel Sabaoth, the Adamus, and all his rulers to come and take away their evil from my disciples. All right, guys, so this next bit got flagged by the scanner. We did try it a couple times and it doesn't seem to want to go through. So we're just going to go ahead and read the translation straight off the page with this phone. And when the evil of the Archons ceased within them, the disciples became immortal. Jesus said, I will give to you the defense for all these places of which I have given you their mystery, their ciphers and their true names and their defenses. When you come forth from the body and perform these mysteries, all the aeons and all those within them will withdraw themselves. But when you reach the 6 aeons, they will restrain you until you receive the mystery of the forgiveness of sins, because it is the innermost of the innermost. And they see the seal on your foreheads, and they see the cipher in your hands. Then the 9 watchers open you to the gates of the treasury of light. The watchers will not speak with you, but they will give you their seals and their mystery. When you reach the rank of the 3 amens, the 3 amens will give you their seal. When you go to the rank of the child, they will give to you their mystery. When you reach the rank of the twin saviors, they will give to you their mystery and their seal and the great name. You will go within to their interior to the rank of the 7 voices, to the rank of the incomprehensible ones, to the rank of the pre-hyper incomprehensible ones, to the rank of the pre-hyper endless ones, to the rank of the undefiled ones, to the rank of the pre-hyper undefiled ones, to the rank of the unmoved ones. Go in to their interior to the rank of the hyper unmoved ones. When you reach that rank, they will give to you their mystery and their seal and the great name of the treasury of light. What's important here is that in the Coptic, this going within like Russian dolls layers like an onion, this keeps going. I'm going to leave out a lot of it. But it goes on and on and on, which is eerily reminiscent of Kabbalistic layers of reality that is described as an onion. Which is weird that we can compare it to the Kabbalistic system. These diagrams are reminiscent of a lot of Kabbalistic diagrams. So, and this is where this gets weirder and weirder. These are their names of the rulers, which are the Archons. And it's all Z's and buzzing noises, which these sigils look like electrical diagrams. So it's very strange that their names sound like electricity. That's just conjecture. These now are their true names. Hear us, our Father. The whole which came forth from Alpha will return to Omega. When the completion of all completions takes place, we now call upon these imperishable names, so that thou shalltest send forth this great light power to follow these 12 incomprehensible ones who are the 12 disciples, since they have recovered the mystery. One of the most telling parts of any Gnostic gospel. Now that these disciples have been dewormed, and whatever else was in these potions and whatnot, they have become not synonymous with the Aeons, but are quite literally the Aeons themselves. And because of all of this, indeed, they are not restrained from approaching the treasury of light. This entire thing is meant to pierce each layer deeper and deeper until you get to this treasury of light. And of course, for that, you'll have to get through Yaldabaoth, the Demiurgos. And I keep saying this gets weirder and weirder. This gets weirder. When you come forth from the body and you reach the first Aeon, and the Archons of that Aeon come forth before you and seal yourselves with this seal. This is its name. Say it only once, hold the cipher in your two hands when you have finished sealing yourselves with the seal, and you have said its name once only. Say these defenses, also withdraw yourselves. You Archons of the first Aeon, because I call upon, and then these names. When the Archons of the first Aeon hear these names, they will be very afraid, and they will withdraw and flee to the west, to the left, and you will proceed upwards. The third Aeon, Yaldabaoth, this is its name. Hold this cipher. The fourth Aeon, Samael, seal yourselves with this seal. This is its name. Say it only once. Hold this cipher. Reach the sixth Aeon, which is called the Little Midst. The Archons of those places have a little goodness within them, because the Archons of those places have believed. The Archons of the Little Midst come before you thinking that perhaps you don't know the mysteries, thinking that perhaps you have not received the mysteries. Say the mystery and seal yourselves with this seal, which is thus. This is its name. Say it once only. Hold this cipher in your hands. Those Archons will withdraw, and they will make way for you, and they will not seize hold of you. But they will also rejoice with you in great joy, because you have received the mysteries while you were still in the body. That is probably the most important takeaway. When you reach the 12th Aeon, the invisible God is in that place with Barbello and the unbegotten God. In a place alone in the 12th Aeon, these veils are drawn before him. Seal yourselves with this seal. Say its name. Say it only once. Hold this cipher in your hands. There's a lot to unpack there that can't be unpacked in a YouTube video. This is the kind of thing that, whether it's psychological, whether it's hallucinogens, whether it's religious, whether it's scientific, we don't know. And to be frank, it doesn't sound very Christian. So we see that some kind of ritual using those various stones and plants were needed to purify all the disciples, men and women, in the flesh before they could even think about approaching higher aeons or realms. Perhaps these dark entities have anchor points in the form of parasites within all earthly people who are born in original sin, or worldly life and flesh. Throughout the book of Jehu, Jesus stresses the importance of having the knowledge needed to recognize by name and attributes the various levels of aeons and the archons that rule them, in order to not be surprised or afraid when finally encountering them. He makes it clear that understanding these post-death obstacles prepares the soul with a kind of stoic gnosis that the parasitical archons themselves are afraid of. This text not only acts as a sort of dewormer for the soul, but again directly parallels other so-called books of the dead from all over the world that also give literal and specific instructions to the ears of those who will soon try their hand at escaping a system of soul recycling. The resemblance is so impossible to ignore that it makes me wonder why so many people torture themselves with speculation over what happens after we die. It just so happens that numerous texts that line up with each other and modern NDEs have it mapped out verbatim. It's no wonder that years before, Plato felt it was so important to dedicate his earthly life to a practical philosophy. Being in an age and setting before the arrival of Christ, the ideals embodied and dedicated to self-sacrifice and service to others was found in Stoicism, a cornerstone of Greek philosophy and a surefire way of ridding ourselves of potential mental parasites while still wearing a temporary human suit. In Gnosticism, the Archons, or rulers of this realm, are parasitical because they sustain themselves by keeping human people mentally weak, and thus easy to contain. However, the popular term used for this is looshing. It is important to note that the so-called term loosh is never mentioned in Gnostic text, or any other ancient text for that matter. How this term found its way into the Gnostic conversation is actually far more interesting. Robert Monroe directed studies on out-of-body experiences that were compiled in his 1985 book, Far Journeys, where he describes a kind of energy generated by powerful human emotions of love and fear. He called this invisible yet palpable energy loosh, and showed detailed independent accounts of various participants who came back saying that there was a reptilian presence encountered within the induced state of trance that would harvest this energy as food, as part of a much larger and cosmic system of energy exchange. The parallels to pre-Christian secularism and Gnosticism are uncanny and obvious. But what makes Monroe's scientific findings actually frightening is the fact that none of the participants were exposed to Gnostic literature, much less each other. These reports came as individual data sets to be compiled and compared later. The comparison to ancient occult secret teachings was not on the menu at the time, and just so happens to fall right into that groove. I might ask you to tell me, what are the chances of that being a fluke? So the big question arises, how do we today go about freeing ourselves from a vast cosmic system of parasites? This is where the tried and true art of Stoicism offers a timeless solution all these years later. Hypothetical. Let's say you are part of a small crew of workers with a job deadline. Hypothetical. Let's say your producer sneezes in the middle of your essay. He knows it's the boring part, but the part that needs to be said because it's important. Hypothetical. Let's say you're part of a small crew of workers with a job deadline. For whatever reason, you're not available one of the days, and your position has to be filled. In an overall sense, you want the job to move forward to completion, obviously. But inside, there's a small but honest hope that the day of your absence doesn't go very well. The reason is simple. If work sucks without you there, you look good. But if work goes off without a hitch during your replacement, even due to circumstantial luck, it will look bad on you as the singular absent individual. People who make decisions about employment might notice and have that notion filed in the back of their minds during future decisions. In this small example, of which you can think of a bajillion others like it, we have a setting where the misfortune of a group of people benefits one singular individual. Now, a person without conscience might try to say or do things that affect the situation in that direction. That is, instead of exceptionally doing well while present on the job, puts the same effort into sabotaging the job in his absence. In the case of a psychopath, however, the person will concoct a plan to create entire job scenarios that purposefully perpetuate this type of mayhem in some short-sighted scheme to benefit from the chaos and misfortune. All of the above are real-world examples of looshing. Microcosmically speaking, these are the very same concepts, just applied horizontally rather than vertically. The Stoic isn't just quiet and confident. The Stoic has fasted himself free from even that first initial impulse regarding the misfortune of others because they have resolved within themselves individual preferences and egoic desires. He has mastered the art of not caring what others think of him by sacrificing that desire of personal preference to a higher regard, in this case, the greater good of the total job that is to be done. A way of being that is much easier said than done, especially when the latter mentioned psychopath figure is put in charge and we are all pinned against each other by design. We are all currently living in that scenario. The misfortune of the masses equates to the benefit of one particular egregore that hides behind the puppets that it hires to put that chaos into place. I implore you that the solution to this problem is not a violent uprising against the puppets, but instead the same way that we get rid of all parasites of all types: fasting. All we have to do is quit feeding it, and in our case today, quit paying for it. Parasites leave when they are not fed, but then they turn their attention to the next potential host, the young and naive. If they are attacked, they don't hesitate to take down the host with them. And when parasites die, they explode and leave a mess of toxic heavy metals that need to be flushed. So the situation is the most dangerous to the next generation, who will have to sort through the mess, because throughout time, the young pick up the pieces. That is, if we leave them pieces.
Hello, police.
Officer, I would like to report 4 bodies in my backyard.
Wait right there, Mr. Pineal.
How do you know my name?
Hang up, Matthew.
I didn't tell you my name.
Hang up.
I didn't tell him my name.
You're all a part of it. They're all parts, all of them.
Who are you calling?
Washington.
What, the CIA, the FBI? They're all pods already.
No, I've got a friend in the Justice Department. I know his home
What are you
number. I
gonna
can
tell
dial
him?
direct, and I can avoid the San Francisco
What are you going to tell him?
Oh my God. Right out in the open.
That's how they do it. That's how they spread it. All those people are changed.
Matthew, I can't go on. I want to go to sleep. I can't stay awake anymore.
You have to. You have to stay awake.
You've probably heard the phrase, the system isn't broken, it's working perfectly fine for select few. Our system of society was not taken over by a psychopathic parasite class. It was built by them from the ground up. The first thing we covered today was the common characteristics of all parasites. They are unable to survive on their own, they are sneaky, surviving by going under the radar, and if they are confronted and challenged, they'll flip out, destroying everything around them. And of course, they have to keep their host sick and disabled to be able to use them, all of which fit the archetype of pure, unhinged survival mode, with no foresight or consideration for others or the future. When you combine that mindset with the strategy and planning of a human psychopath, you have a disastrous recipe that hurts everyone, including the psychopathic host eventually. We don't need a conspiracy theorist to connect all kinds of dots and pull up secret files to see clearly that our entire society is run by puppets who have let their parasites act through them and, knowingly or unknowingly, taken this short-sighted, despairing mindset. This brings a little bit of light to the classic phrase, the conspiracies are true, and no, I don't have a f***ing link. I mean, think about it. School textbooks were published by Maxwell's father, and guess what else he came up with? The scientific peer review system. Our modern system of medicine was created by the hyper-rich very recently. In both cases, and more to be found out, we have the same archetypal parasitical behavior. We are numb to it because we were born into it as a baseline of normal. So even as we fall prey to this parasite, we cannot see it clearly. The darkness is so close, we can't focus our eyes on it. But if you take a step back and look at the full picture, you can see an obvious pattern. The examples are on the front porch. Insurance companies don't provide a service besides wasting our time, so they made it illegal for us not to give them our money. We pay taxes to congressional lawmakers who not only don't provide a service, but don't even do work. They're on vacation with unlimited sick days and only show up to pass a law when their masters pay them extra to do so. Each law passed is of course meant to displace the taxpayer's quality of life to benefit those who are already well off. The public schooling system is meant to create workers for a consumption machine. When we give our email to a corporation, sometimes they sell it off to hackers. Popularized music is filtered through rituals to infiltrate the public mind, like violent rap music being created and funded by private prison systems in order to collect more inmates, thus leeching more and more funding. So-called terrorist organizations are created and funded by national security to ensure that we continuously need them more and more. There are dozens of other examples of creating a problem to sell a solution, but that's not what this is about. What needs our awareness is what happens when a parasite is detected and starts to lose control. Our modern age of information is no longer covert enough for parasites to work under the radar. And we are all now able to give each other a clear view of what is being done in the shadows. The natural response is, of course, to stop all the bad stuff from happening. Here's the problem. We've already seen how a parasite responds to that. It will try to kill its entire environment. A last resort is to multiply and expand out a point of futility, even if it means parasuicide. We are currently seeing that happen in broad daylight. You have certainly noticed that when a grandiose corruption is found out by the public, like say billions of dollars stolen and missing, it is often followed by an enormous tragic event that casts a shadow shrouding the wrongdoing from being found out. That setup and punchline maneuver is of course pre-planned, thus also eventually found out by the public. Now we have a real impasse on our hands, and the maneuvers become even more desperate. The next step for the parasite is to execute an all-out deliberate attack. Lyme disease is a man-made illness, an experiment aiming for a quiet bioweapon to be carried through a common outdoor parasite, ticks. There is no need for me to cover all the details that are readily available. What needs to be said is the part that doesn't seem to occur to the public. The weirdest part of the dilemma that we will soon be facing is the capitulation of willful ignorance by those who publish information. Basically, you have seen or are going to see hundreds of articles dropped by hundreds of sources all saying that this will be the worst tick season ever and that Lyme disease should be feared and avoided at all costs. You'll see all of the science on how ticks behave and how Lyme spreads. You'll see products for bug sprays, natural home remedies, proper clothing and protocols for checking yourself and your kids, and a million other ways to navigate this enormous problem. They will put every single nugget of information about it in these articles and never once mention the one single most important thing that everyone already knows: that we are being attacked, and will literally dance in word circles around the main problem at hand. And that is very, very weird behavior to see happen. Here's an alarming perspective. Kids in history class are taught that even in war, there are certain acts that are too heinous, and those are called war crimes. We don't attack our own, we don't use bioweapons, and women and children are to be avoided at all costs. Fast forward to the future of those same children, and they are being attacked with bioweapons when going outside to play on our own very land. And when the attackers get caught, they say it was an experiment, like that's normal protocol. And it works, because we keep paying them to do so. So,
surrounded. How did you get in here?
I've been wandering among them for hours. They can be fooled.
How?
Don't show any emotions. Hide your feelings.
When you sleep,
Watch out for each other.
we're going to beat them. Okay?
Okay.
So the Gospel of the Essenes is full of all kinds of natural remedies that, unfortunately, I can't really list to talk about without getting flagged as, giving like false information or whatever, when the fact of the matter is that those natural remedies that come from the earth are now poisoned. But we can talk about some moderns. Sunlight. We mentioned how strange it is that sunlight kills both mythical vampires and literal parasites, but how much weirder is it that our leaders have been doing everything they can to keep you inside, to the point of releasing studies that say the sun causes melanoma. It's a good thing that ancient people never saw those studies, eh? Fasting. When out of food, your body will move on to processing out the bad stuff. Breathing exercises. This is actually mentioned often in the Essene Gospels and is very effective for just about everything. There are, of course, dozens of other ways to treat the body, but let's not forget what Christ and all of the other great masters taught about fasting the mind, as it does indeed have a direct effect on everything else. For example, scrolling is a toxin of the mind and wreaks havoc on your dopamine and general nervous system. Parasites of all kind, all the way up, just love that screen time. But a proper book doesn't glare you with blue light and gives you the same information without numbing down the soul. Might not know it, but when laying on the couch and being lazy with a book, like classical music on steroids, your brain is working out. And as reading gets easier and more pleasant, those parasites that depend on your doom-scrolling cortisol will be dying off the entire time. But by all means, comment your personal recipe. I'll be hanging out in there. And we should all be sharing this information and, helping to pass the torch and the pitchfork when the time comes.
Oh, that's spicy.
In this ep, we have covered plenty of ways to rid of parasites of all kinds above and below, allegorical and literal, biological and psychological. But there is one method left out that is never really mentioned, probably because it's the most difficult. and that is awareness and familiarity. We don't want to look at things that make us squeamish, especially when we see a reflection of it in ourselves. Now, I'm not trying to pull some kind of parasites are within, so we should look within type of bullshit. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that each one of us has personality traits that are socially parasitic to others and ourselves. The reason you aren't deeply familiar with those particular traits is because one of your minds is so ashamed of them that it hides them from your other tripartite minds, like Sophia did with her demiurgos and causing all that cosmic drama. But we have to remember, parasites of any kind can only do their thing if they go unseen. They depend on being covert and undetected. And anything and everything in this world considered bad cannot be dealt with unless we know what it is and where it's at. We have to become familiar with it, face to face, no matter how hard it is to look. So, what is the Gnostic revealer's job? To the original Christians, Christ was considered the divine logos embodied in flesh. He made it clear that this is something to be realized and is absolutely available to all beings who have the willpower to simply look. It is the reconciliation of opposing forces within that propel an effortless yet unlimited divine energy. The parallels to Taoism and Eastern Zen are obvious, but when looking at both with a sharpened eye, Uncle Carl saw something different. Something obvious but overlooked. These mystical teachings can be demystified today as a psychological process that he called individuation. Confrontations with the parts of ourselves that we hide from ourselves takes ambition and courage. The denied shadow element within is the part keeping us in amnesia. When we push it away, we actively reject remembering our divinity. So, unfortunately, avoiding shame keeps us bound to ignorance, which is considered the only real sin. The parabolic sayings of Jesus issued in the Gospel of Thomas certainly seemed very metaphysical and spiritually strange, but seeing them from Carl's angle might bring clarity to this enigmatic lexicon of one-liners. Sayings such as, "That which you have within will save you if you bring it forth. That which you do not will kill you. And of course, the kingdom will not come by waiting on it, for it is not here or there, but within. Whosoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not taste death." Perhaps these are all timeless psychological pieces of advice. After all, in the accepted biblical canon, Christ says something else very promising. "With belief, these works that I do, you can do even greater." So let's get to work, because the kingdom of heaven is within you. And if you don't recognize the place, well, maybe you need a little dewormer.